Next, Mr. Chameleon and the Fashion World Murder Case. Tonight, we again present the famous Mr. Chameleon of Central Police Headquarters in his famous cases of crime and murder. Brought to you by the makers of genuine Bayer aspirin and Phillips Milk of Magnesia tablets. Mr. Chameleon, as you know, is the famous and dreaded detective who frequently uses a disguise to track down a killer. A disguise which at all times is recognized by the audience. Tonight we give you Mr. Chameleon in the Fashion World Murder Case. The curtain rises on a richly furnished suite high atop the fashionable Plaza Sheraton Hotel. A tall, languid-looking girl wearing a fabulously expensive mink coat walks up and down before a full-length mirror as a well-dressed young man watches her anxiously. He is Richard Cheval, whose father, John Cheval, owns one of New York's most exclusive fashion shops. And as Richard speaks to the girl in the mink coat, he little dreams that his words are opening the door to murder and horror.
Well, Zizi, how do you like it? It's a beautiful mink, isn't it?
Yes, it's not bad, Richard.
Not bad. It's worth $15,000. That's what it would sell for in Father's shop.
Yes, I suppose it would.
Zizi, what's the matter? Aren't you pleased about it?
Here, Richard. You can take the mink coat back.
Take it back? Zizi, for heaven's sake, what's wrong, darling? Tell me.
Sure, I'll tell you. I'm fed up with this kind of life. I'm sick of it.
Oh, Zizi, darling, haven't I given you everything? Beautiful clothes, this expensive apartment. What more do you want?
I want to be known as your wife, as Mrs. Richard Cheval. When we go to the Store Club in El Morocco and the Colony, I want people to know I'm your wife, not just one of the models who works in your father's shop.
Oh, Zizi, listen to me.
I'm sick of this secret marriage. I'm your wife. I've a marriage license to prove it.
But, darling, you know why we can't tell anyone. You know what a tyrant my father is. Why, he'd cut me off without a penny if he knew about our marriage.
You have your job at your father's shop? You're making plenty.
And how long would I keep it if Father found out about us being married?
Richard, either you tell your father the truth, that you and I are married, or we're through.
Zizi. Oh, darling, you don't mean that.
There are other men who wouldn't be ashamed to recognize me as their wife.
You mean Ned Marshall, I suppose. If he's been making a play for you again,
We'll leave Ned Marshall out of this.
Oh, Zizi, if I tell Father about our marriage, he'll change his will. He's threatened to cut me off before. I'll lose everything.
If you don't tell him, you'll lose me. Well, Richard, it's up to you. Which is it going to be?
And now, several hours later, we see Richard Cheval, very nervous and ill at ease, entering his father's study in the Cheval home in the East 60s.
Oh, there you are, Father. I hoped I'd find you in the study.
So you're home this evening, are you, Richard? Well, that's a change.
Well, I thought I'd like to spend an evening with you, Father.
Indeed. Well, what troubles are you in this time?
Trouble? Why,
Stop stammering and tell me what it is. What cheap girl are you mixed up with now?
Well, Father,
I warned you, Richard. One more scrape and I'll disinherit you. You'd have done it long ago. You're a weakling and a fool.
Father, I don't see why you're so suspicious just because I choose to spend a quiet evening at home with you. Here, let me pour your glass of port wine, Father.
Well, at least you can do something useful. The decanter's on the table.
I'll have one with you.
What? You drinking port wine, Richard? Whiskey is your usual drink.
Here you are, Father. Here's your glass, and here's mine.
There's nothing like good port wine to make a man feel satisfied with things. I've always said that...
Father, what's wrong?
Richard,
Father! Good Lord! Help! Help someone. Come quick. Something awful's happened to Father. He's been poisoned.
And now, a short time later, we find Mr. Chameleon, the famous and dreaded detective, and his assistant detective, Dave Arnold, just entering John Cheval's house. And a frightened, rather plain-looking young woman is saying,
You're Mr. Chameleon.
That's right, and this is Detective Arnold.
Please come in.
Thank you.
I'm Marie Cheval. My uncle's body is in the study.
Marie Cheval? You're the dead man's niece?
Oh, I don't wonder you're being surprised, Mr. Chameleon. My wearing this dreadful blue dress.
I'm not here to talk about clothes, Miss Cheval. Just what happened here tonight?
Oh, Mr. Chameleon, it's horrible. Uncle John and his son, my cousin Richard, were having a glass of port wine in the study. And then suddenly Richard came running out crying that his father was poisoned. And a few minutes later, his father was dead.
Where is your cousin Richard now, Mary?
In his room. He's almost at the point of collapse.
I see. Was anyone else here this evening about the time that your uncle, John Cheval, was poisoned?
Why, no, Mr. Chameleon.
Mm-hmm. Mary, I understand that your uncle had been in poor health lately, that he was no longer active in running the famous John Cheval fashion shop.
Well, yes. Well, I mean, Ned Marshall is supposed to be running the shop.
Ned Marshall? Rather well-known young man about town, famous for his champagne parties? I see his name in the gossip columns.
Ned Marshall got publicity for the shop, Mr. Chameleon. But Uncle John pulled the strings. Like Richard and me, Ned Marshall was just Uncle John's puppet.
You sound bitter, Marie Cheval.
Not bitter, Mr. Chameleon. It's just that Uncle John was a very dominating man.
And someone hated him enough to murder him by poison. Marie, will you tell your cousin Richard to come down, please? Detective Arnold and I will go to the study where you say your uncle's body is.
Yes, Mr. Chameleon. The study is at the end of the hall.
Thank you. Come along, Dave.
Yes, sir.
Here we are. And here's John Cheval's body slumped across the desk.
What poison do you think it was, Mr. Chameleon?
I don't know, Dave. Several possibilities. There are 2 decanters on the table. One contains whiskey, other port wine. Here are 2 glasses. Only one of them is empty.
Well, that must be the one John Cheval drank from.
Dave, you take this decanter of port wine and the 2 glasses and have one of the boys rush them to the laboratory to be analyzed.
Gotcha, sir.
Mr. Chameleon, this is my cousin, Richard Cheval.
Murdered man's son. Huh? Come in, Richard. Mary, you wait outside, please.
Very well.
Mr. Chameleon, I just can't believe my father is dead.
I'm sure it must be a great shock to you, Richard. You were fond of him?
Fond of him? Why, of course I was.
And you got along well together? You never quarreled?
Why should Father and I quarrel? We were devoted. Mr. Chameleon, can't we go into another room? I mean, seeing my father lying there like that?
Yes, of course. Come along.
Father's den is the next room. It's right in here.
Thank you. Richard, tell me everything that you know about tonight, please.
There isn't much to tell, Mr. Chameleon. We had dinner about 7.
You and your father?
And my cousin, Marie.
Your cousin lives here with you?
Yes, Mr. Chameleon. Father took Marie in when her parents died some years ago.
And you 3 had dinner together?
The 3 of us and Ned Marshall.
Ned Marshall, who runs your father's fashion shop. Now, that's strange. Your cousin Marie didn't mention his being here this evening.
Marie wouldn't mention his being here. She tried to keep Ned's name out of a mess like this.
Why?
Because Marie is crazy about Ned Marshall, Mr. Chameleon. She'd do anything to protect him.
Why should Ned Marshall need to be protected?
Because he's the one who murdered my father.
What? Richard, have you any proof of that?
No, I haven't any proof, Mr. Chameleon. But I can tell you this. Ned Marshall was sick of being ordered around by Father. In spite of his high position at the shop, his name in the society columns, Father treated him like a lackey.
Well, Ned Marshall could have left your father's shop.
Father wouldn't let him. Nobody crossed Father, Mr. Chameleon. When he said to do something, people did it.
Well, your cousin, Marie Cheval, did your father order her around?
You saw her, Mr. Chameleon. Marie could be attractive if she had some decent clothes, but Father never allowed her to spend money on clothes. He wanted her plain and colorless, so she wouldn't be, to use his words, a bait for men.
Marie must have hated your father for that. I should imagine any normal
He
girl.
said every woman who came into his fabulous shop to buy clothes did it to attract men. He laughed at their weakness and scorned them for it.
But he wasn't above taking their money.
Mr. Chameleon.
I'm in here, Dave.
Mr. Chameleon, I found this character sneaking around the side of the house. He says his name is Ned Marshall.
I assure you I wasn't sneaking, Detective Arnold. I was about to ring the bell. You must be Mr. Chameleon, the detective. I've heard about you.
And you must be John Cheval's manager. I've heard about you, Mr. Marshall, especially your famous champagne parties. Tell me, you were here to dinner tonight, Mr. Marshall. Why did you come back?
Because Marie Cheval telephoned me that Mr. Cheval had been poisoned.
Marie, he phoned you?
Richard, how could you do a thing like this? How could you think you'd get away with it?
I get away with... Marshall, you must be crazy.
Ned Marshall, are you accusing Richard of murdering his father?
I was afraid it would happen, Mr. Chameleon. Afraid Richard would lose his head. A man can be driven just so far. Richard, if you didn't care about yourself, at least you might have thought of Zizi.
Zizi? Well, I don't know what you're talking about.
Judging by your expression, Richard, it's obvious that you're lying. All right, who is Zizi?
Why, she's a model at Father's fashion shop, Mr. Chameleon.
She's also the girl you married secretly a month ago.
You... How did you know, Ned Marshall?
Zizi herself told me.
Well, a secret marriage. Where is your wife now, Richard?
She has an apartment at the Plaza Sheraton, Mr. Chameleon.
And why did you keep the marriage a secret from your father?
Because, he wasn't well. We were afraid the shock would be too much.
Oh, why don't you tell Mr. Chameleon the truth, Richard? You were afraid your father would disinherit you.
Keep out of this, Marshall. You're trying to frame me to cover up your own guilt. You hated Father.
No, I didn't hate him. He was difficult, but he paid me well for my services. And I'd have been a fool to destroy the hand that fed me.
Richard, tell me. After you finished dinner, now what happened then? Were you and your father alone in the study?
Yes, Mr. Chameleon. I poured him his usual glass of port wine. He drank it. And then suddenly he cried out in pain and died.
You poured him a glass of port. Now, there were 2 glasses of port on the table.
Yes, the other glass of port was for myself.
For yourself? Richard, since when have you taken to drinking port?
Ned Marshall, you're not framing me for Father's death. Get out of my way!
Richard, you're after him, Dave.
Oh, no, you don't, buddy. You're staying here.
Let me go, you!
Mr. Chameleon, look at this. It's a gun, and it just fell out of Richard Cheval's coat pocket.
Well, a gun. I wonder, Richard, did you plan to shoot your father in case the poison in the port wine didn't work?
Mr. Chameleon and the Fashion World murder case continues in just a moment. Something to keep in mind when you're seeking fast relief from an ordinary headache is this. There's no necessity to guess about Bayer aspirin speed because your own eyes can show you how quickly a Bayer aspirin tablet is ready to go to work. Simply drop the tablet in a glass of water and notice how soon it starts disintegrating. What it does in the water, it also does in your stomach. And when you make this test, one reason why Bayer aspirin gives you such amazingly fast relief becomes almost instantly evident. For the Bayer aspirin tablet starts disintegrating before it reaches the bottom of the glass, is actually ready to go to work in 2 seconds. Quick relief is one reason why it pays to take Bayer aspirin whenever you're in pain. Another is dependable relief. No other pain reliever can match its record of use by millions of normal people without ill effect. When you buy, ask for it by name, Bayer aspirin, not just for aspirin alone. Get the 100-tablet bottle and you get Bayer aspirin tablets for less than a penny apiece. And now back to Mr. Chameleon and the Fashion World murder case. When John Cheval, owner of the exclusive John Cheval fashion shop, was mysteriously poisoned after drinking a glass of port wine, Mr. Chameleon discovered that 3 people might have had reason to kill him. John's son Richard, who feared his father would disinherit him when he learned of his marriage to the model Zizi. Marie Cheval, John's niece, and Ned Marshall, the manager of John Cheval's shop. Now in a room in the Cheval home, Mr. Chameleon is saying to the murdered man's son,
So, Richard Cheval, you carry a gun. Perhaps you planned to shoot your father if the poison in the port wine didn't work.
No, I didn't murder my father. Ned Marshall is the guilty one. He hated Father.
Don't be an idiot, Richard.
Tell me, Richard, About this secret marriage of yours, about your wife, Zizi. Why did your father disapprove of her?
Well, Father didn't disapprove of Zizi. It was just...
Mr. Chameleon, I'll tell you about Zizi, and I'll tell you the truth.
Mr. Chameleon, it's Marie Cheval, the murdered man's niece.
Yes, Marie, I told you to wait in the other room.
Well, I couldn't help hearing what Richard said, Mr. Chameleon. And there's something you ought to know.
Keep Zizi out of this, Marie.
Go on, Marie.
Mr. Chameleon, Zizi was here tonight about an hour before Uncle John was murdered.
What? Here in this house?
She came here to model a plain suit for me from the shop. Before she left, I saw her go into the study. A few minutes later, she came out and left the house.
That's a lie.
It's the truth, Richard.
Marie, why didn't you tell me this before?
Because I didn't think it was important, Mr. Chameleon.
Dave, come along.
Where to, Mr. Chameleon?
To pay a call on Zizi, Richard Cheval's secret bride.
Okay.
It's a cinch that everybody in this case is connected with the fashion world, and somebody worked out a clever design for murder. All right, you three, I'll want to question you later. Right here.
I'll say.
This way, Dave.
Well, Marie, I hope you're proud of what you've done.
Richard, I told the truth, and where are you going?
To my room. But don't think you're going to get away with this.
Ned. Oh, Ned.
Marie, why did you do that? Why did you try to incriminate Zizi?
Oh, Ned, darling, don't be angry because I told Mr. Chameleon about Zizi being here. I know you're crazy about her, too.
Marie.
But let me tell you this, Ned Marshall. I'm as pretty as Zizi is. And now that Uncle John is dead, half his money will go to me. I'll be able to buy all the clothes I want. Uncle John will never rule my life again. Never, never.
Good heavens, how you must have hated it.
I didn't say that.
No, but it's in your voice, Marie. In that wild, intense look in your eyes. I never realized how much you hated your uncle.
And now, a short time later, Mr. Chameleon and Detective Dave Arnold have just rung the bell of Zizi's luxurious hotel suite.
Some setup, Mr. Chameleon. Must have cost Richard Cheval every cent he had to keep his secret wife in a place like this.
Yes, Dave.
Yes, what is it?
You are Zizi, the model at Cheval's shop?
Yes,
Secretly married to the owner's son, Richard Cheval?
that's right.
I'm Chameleon of Central Police Headquarters, and this is Detective Arnold. May we come in?
Why, sure. I've got nothing to hide.
Thank you. Then you won't object to Detective Arnold searching your suite.
Why, now, wait a minute.
Get going, Dave. You know what to look for.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chameleon, you've got no right breaking in here.
In a case of murder, the police take on certain rights, Zizi.
A case of murder?
Now, don't pretend that you didn't know old John Cheval was murdered.
Why, I had...
You're a very attractive model, Zizi, but not a very clever actress. It was obvious when you opened the door that your husband Richard had warned you that we were coming.
Okay, so Richard did phone me. What of it?
Mr. Chameleon, take a look at this, will you?
Small bottle of white liquid. White arsenic. Deadly poison.
I was searching Zizi's bedroom closet, and I found that bottle in the pocket of her coat.
No, you couldn't have. I don't know anything about that bottle.
Don't you, Zizi? Tell me, what were you doing in John Cheval's study earlier tonight, just before he was poisoned to death?
Who told you I was there?
Never mind that. Answer my question.
I wanted to talk to John Cheval, Mr. Chameleon, to tell him about my marriage to his son, Richard.
Or perhaps it was to put some of this deadly poison in the decanter of port wine.
No, I didn't.
Well, then, Zizi, explain how this bottle of poison got into your coat.
I think I've got a pretty good idea, Mr. Chameleon. I left my coat in the hall while I modeled a suit for Marie Cheval. She must have poisoned her uncle's wine and planted the bottle of poison in my coat pocket. Why, sure. Marie Cheval hates me, Mr. Chameleon.
She hates you? Why, Zizi?
Because of Ned Marshall, who runs her uncle's shop, the one where I work. Ned's crazy about me. Marie's so jealous she can't see straight.
Marie Cheval is in love with Ned Marshall.
Yes, I'll say she is. What's more, she hated her uncle for making her dress so plain that Ned Marshall never even noticed her.
I see. Zizi, the fact remains that we found a bottle of poison in your coat pocket. And it was the same poison that killed John Cheval, that man who didn't want you for a daughter-in-law.
What's wrong with a model for a wife?
Nothing, as far as I'm concerned, but John Cheval had set ideas on the subject.
Richard said the old fool would cut him out of his will if he knew. But I didn't poison him, I didn't.
That's all for the present, Zizi Cheval. Come along, Dave. We're going to police headquarters.
And now, sometime later, at Central Police Headquarters, Mr. Chameleon is saying to the Commissioner of Police,
Well, Commissioner, the laboratory confirmed my suspicions. The port wine that killed John Cheval contained white arsenic.
And you found a bottle of that same poison in Zizi Cheval's coat pocket. The girl Cheval's son was secretly married to.
Yes. Zizi says it must have been put there by Marie Cheval, the murdered man's niece, who was jealous of her.
You think Marie is the guilty one, Chameleon?
Well, Marie had a strong hatred for her uncle. Richard Cheval hated his father, but he'd hardly frame his own wife for the murder. Nor would Ned Marshall, who it appears was also in love with the beautiful Zizi.
Well, it could be any one of those four people.
Yes, but which one is it? It's the question. Well, maybe I found a way to get the answer.
You mean through one of your disguises, Chameleon?
Well, Commissioner, John Cheval owned a fashion shop specializing in everything rich women buy, but particularly in furs.
Mm-hmm.
And white arsenic is used in the preparation of furs.
Yes, go on, Chameleon.
Well, I'm going to disguise myself as, Pierre Dupre, an unassuming little Frenchman, one of the many employed in John Cheval's workroom. Tomorrow morning, Commissioner, Pierre Dupre is going to pay a visit to the murder house.
And now it is the following morning. Just around the corner from the Cheval home, Mr. Chameleon is saying to Detective Dave Arnold,
All right, Dave. You know what to do.
You bet, Mr. Chameleon. And that's one of the cleverest disguises you've ever had. I'd never recognize her.
Dave, did you tell Sergeant Matthews to attend to that matter that I spoke about?
Yes, sir. It's been taken care of.
Good. I'm going into the Cheval house now. In a few moments, you're to follow me, but through the side entrance.
Good luck, Mr. Chameleon. Or should I say, Pierre Dupre.
And now, a few minutes later, we see Mr. Chameleon in his disguise as Pierre Dupre, a slight, unassuming little Frenchman, being ushered into the drawing room of the Cheval home by Marie, the murdered man's niece. And Mr. Chameleon is saying in the voice of his disguise,
You are Mademoiselle Marie, Cheval's niece.
Yes, I'm Marie Cheval.
Marie, who is this man? What does he want?
He says his name is Pierre Dupre, Richard. And he came here at Mr. Chameleon's orders, just as he ordered the rest of us to be here.
Pierre Dupre? Who the devil are you, anyway?
You do not know me, Monsieur Ned Marshall. Well, I am not surprised. You are the manager of the great Jean Cheval fashion shop. You would not have noticed me. I am only employed in the workroom, in the back.
In the workroom? Richard, I never saw this man in your father's workroom.
Neither did I, Zizi, but...
This morning, I read in the paper that Monsieur Jean Cheval was poisoned. And suddenly I recall something I see in the workroom. Something which may help to find Monsieur's murderer.
What do you mean, help find the murderer?
I call police headquarters, Mademoiselle Zizi. And I'm told by Monsieur Chameleon to come here and wait for him.
Dupre, what is it you have to tell Mr. Chameleon?
I'm not at liberty to say, Monsieur Richard. When Chameleon arrives, then I will talk.
You're bluffing. You don't know anything.
Be still, Marie.
I don't see what you're all so worked up about. Sit down, Dupre.
Merci, Monsieur Marshal.
Mr. Chameleon will be along soon. Here, let me pour you a drink.
Ned.
A drink. But yes, thank you. I will have a drink.
Well, here you are, Dupre. You look as if you could use a good drink of whiskey.
You are very kind, Monsieur Marshal. I feel better already.
Monsieur Dupre, what is it? What's wrong?
The pain. Such terrible pain.
Great Scott, he's going to keel over.
Here, let me help you, Dupre. There's a couch in the other room. You can lie down. Wait here, Richard. Marie, I'll take care of him. Right in here, Dupre. Easy now. Lean on me.
The whiskey. There was something in the whiskey.
Yes, you old fool. There was poison in it. And you will never be able to tell the cop Chameleon what you saw in John Cheval's workroom. You'll be dead before Chameleon gets here.
Will I, Ned Marshall?
What?
Will I die just as John Cheval died from the poison that you put in his port wine?
Mr. Chameleon, you're You're not Pierre Dupre.
That's right, Ned Marshall. I hoped my disguise would reveal the killer of John Cheval, and it did.
You'll never get me.
Stay where you are, Marshal. I've got you covered.
Detective Arnold, I've been framed. It was a dirty trick.
I suspected you of the murderer, Ned Marshall. All I needed was proof.
All right. I admit I poisoned the old tyrant. I was fed up with his treating me like dirt, with taking his orders and licking his boots. I wanted to kill old John, and I meant to kill his son Richard, too.
Yes, that's why you poisoned the whiskey, too, wasn't it? Because Richard usually drank whiskey, not port. I had one of my men refill the decanter, but you thought it still contained the poisoned whiskey when you gave Pierre Dupre a drink.
Yes, and I'd have gotten away with my plans if it hadn't been for you, Chameleon.
You wanted both John Cheval and his son out of the way, Ned Marshall, and then Zizi would have inherited the Cheval fortune. And you hoped to marry her and have the money, too. There's just one thing. Why did you plant the bottle of poison in Zizi's coat pocket?
I thought the coat belonged to Marie Cheval. I was going to frame Marie for the murders, and I almost succeeded.
That's what often happens in murders, Marshal. There's one small error, one little slip that'll send a killer to the electric chair. Take him away, Dave.
And with these words, Mr. Chameleon concludes tonight's murder case. If you suffer from upset stomach, gas, heartburn and bloating, an overstuffed feeling, or any other unpleasant symptoms of acid indigestion, here's news you won't want to miss. News of a wonderful preparation that's bringing more and more people amazingly quick and effective relief. It's Phillips Tablets. Yes, when acid indigestion distresses you, you can actually feel like a new person almost instantly just by taking 2 or 3 peppermint-flavored Phillips Tablets. It's simply remarkable how quickly Phillips Milk of Magnesia tablets work, and the reason is this. Phillips tablets contain one of the fastest, most effective stomach sweeteners known to medical science. Phillips tablets not only bring you the acid indigestion relief you've always dreamed of getting, but they do it pleasantly, too. For they have a delightfully refreshing flavor, a flavor that leaves your mouth so wonderfully sweet and clean, lots of people find them as pleasant to take as after-dinner mints. So the moment you feel any sign of acid indigestion, let 2 or 3 Phillips tablets melt in your mouth, and you'll be delighted with the relief they bring. Remember, always carry Phillips tablets in your pocket or purse to take after meals or wherever you may be when acid indigestion causes you distress. Pocket-sized tins of 30 tablets cost only 25 cents. Ask for Phillips tablets today. Listen next Wednesday night at this same time for Mr. Chameleon, the man of many faces, in The Titled Husband Murder Case. The part of Mr. Chameleon is played by Carl Swenson, with dialogue by Gene Carroll, based on the original story by Frank and Ann Hummert. It is directed by Richard Leonard, with music by Victor Arden. Your announcer is Howard Claney.
You may have trouble knowing if your teeth are still as white and bright as they used to be, for improper cleaning causes them to become dingy gradually. But your friends notice it, for it robs you of charm. That's why it's important to use a dentifrice that does more than fight tooth decay. What you need is a dentifrice that also whitens and brightens your teeth, gets them really clean. And no dentifrice cleans teeth like powder. Try Dr. Lyon's tooth powder. And if you don't agree that it makes your teeth cleaner than your present dentifrice, whitens and brightens them so your smile sparkles with its old-time luster, your money will be refunded. Get either regular or ammoniated Dr. Lyon's tooth powder.
Listen for Mr. Chameleon in The Titled Husband Murder Case next Wednesday night at this time. This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System.